Welcome back. Thank you everyone for coming to our last Gatty lecture of the semester on this very snowy day. It's cold, but I believe that the presentation will be very exciting for all of us. And Chris, thank you very much for Chris to help facilitating the whole invitation thing. And so we will have Chris from music department introduce Kitsie. Let's welcome.
So yeah, it's a great pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Kitsie Emerson, Dr. Kathryn Emerson. So Kitsie and I first met when we were both studying gamelan in Solo in Central Java. She was a few years ahead of me with that, and it was really her second major passion. Her first was actually piano. So she actually studied piano here at Cornell as an undergraduate with Malcolm Bilson, who name that some of you might know. And then when I met her, she was already very busy playing wayang, but at that point playing gender. She'd really mastered that instrument and was accompanying her now husband, Kitty, and playing with many, and he's seated in the back. He was a fantastic kandang player. And I'll put the plug in now. You can come and hear both of them play with me and the ensembles I direct on Tuesday at 3 p.m. in Lincoln Hall. And I think there should be announcements coming out through the Seat channel, so you should see those. And I think there's probably a poster around too. So that through playing for Wayang, that led her to her third major passion and focus, and she brought the same intense focus that she applied to piano and to studying gamelan to studying Wayang. Produced translations of, well, she developed a system of translating Wayang live, so she'll type as the puppeteer is speaking, so it doesn't interrupt the flow of the performance in the way that spoken translation does. So really fantastic insight, and so having produced these three volumes of the texts books with the translations, and then also the subtitles, and that's what we're watching, one of those with a DVD set of 3 different styles of Wayang performance. Someone said to her, a fellow colleague of ours, this is dissertation material. This could be a dissertation. And so, and suggested that she do this program where she could earn a dissertation, potentially by adding a little bit to that. Instead, she did a whole other study. And so and this is now building on that in a new direction. So without further ado, let's welcome Kitsie Emerson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here. As Chris said, I was an undergraduate student here in 1979 to 1983. I'll just be honest about that. And I was just a pianist. I didn't want to think about anything else. And in the short 3 years after I graduated, I was already completely obsessed with gamelan, but that's a whole other story. 3 years after graduating with drama, studied gamelan and just loved it. And 12 years later, turned to Wayang more, and here I am. So today's lecture, I'll just jump right into today's topic, which is social critique in Wayang, and a particular character, Semar, his vision of utopia. And this story is told by 3 different dhalang over a 40-year period. So you see, the dhalang is basically the dhalang, the puppeteer, the dhalang's version of what utopia would be, what the perfect Indonesian society would be or should be. And they use the word utopia, even though the actual story uses the word heavens. What should the heavens be like? But they mean heaven on earth. What should the heavens be like? I use the word utopia because I took a really terrific class here in 1983 on utopia literature. Just thought it was full circle when I thought I'm going to use the word utopia. So it's Semar's version of Utopia, told by 3 different dialogues. So they are getting their version, or in that one case, what the government has asked that dialogue to say the Utopia would be. So that's what the talk is going to be about. But I'd just like to start by defining the scope, kind of defining the scope really quickly. These are the 3 dhalang, and I'm going to use the pronoun he because they are all men, but there are female dhalang. And every year at the conservatory, out of a new class of 20, there are usually 3 or 4 female dhalang. They go all the way through, graduate, and perform, and are accepted in the performance world very readily. But these 3 men, Ki Anom Soeroto, Ki Mujoko Joko Raharjo, and Ki Purbo Asmoro. This is the men that I work closely with, and I've written all my books about. But these men are very important dialogue from an earlier era. These 3 men did the same episode, 1980, created 1980, 1980, or 89, we're not sure, in 2004. It's been performed many times, but was created in 1980. This episode was created in 80, was created in 2024, and have a very different view of Utopia from Semar's viewpoint. So we're talking about, we're going to talk about these 3 versions: the think tank version, the popularized version, and the newest version. So we're talking about Wayang kulit from Solo. I just want to make that clear because social critique in other kinds of wayang might be different. It is different. So we're just talking, I'm just specializing, I guess, in studying wayang kulit from Surakarta, Central Java, Indonesia, the type that are made from the water buffalo hide. They're carved, so they look beautiful from the shadow side, but they're also painted beautifully. And in Java, people watch mostly from the color side. In Bali, they watch mostly from the shadow side, right, Kathryn? Yeah. But in Java, they watch mostly from the colored side. They like the display of the whole, to see the dhalang musicians and to see the dhalang and to see everything. Oh, so we're not talking about 3-dimensional wayang kulit, but the wayang with their screen cloths. We're not talking about wayang acted out with people, or when it's in very thin but 3-dimensional wooden puppet called wayang kulit, or even these, which are wayang suket, made from dried grasses. But these all have the same types of stories, and I'm sure a lot of social critique. But what I'm focusing on with these types of wayang in my work when I study, so we're not talking about these, but we're going down this side, and specifically wayang kulit Purbo, because wayang kulit Matthew don't tell other kinds of stories. I'm focusing on the wayang Purbo, which tells the stories of the Mahabharata, borrowed from India and then changed. So we have evidence from 907 from a bronze plate in Java that advertises a wayang kulit performance, names the dhalang, names the story, and it focuses on Bhima, so we know it's from the Mahabharata, from 907. Now there's already a bronze plate in East Java saying, come see this wayang by this puppeteer with this story, assuming that it already knows that, then it must have been around since way before, right? But that's the earliest evidence that we have. The reason I find social critique in these stories so interesting is because it's abstract in a way. These are stories that already exist from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. And the dhalang has to really work to think how to make it relevant to today. And they have to really work to think how to make it speak to people, but it's no different than the great Greek tragedies, maybe, or something like that. How does it speak to our relevancy today? And the dhalang have to work quite hard. If you're telling the stories, there's a wayang called Kitsie that tells the stories of defeating colonialism in 1945. Well, those social critique messages are right out in front of you. But with these stories, the dhalang really has to think hard about how to do it. But the Javanese people love these stories. they are far more popular. If you have a night in Java where all of these are being offered somewhere, this will have audiences in the to 6,000. These performances in a big field. These will have 25 people, 30 people there, nobody there, it's being recorded, you know. So and it's not a danger. There's no reason for any journalist to be writing things like, why include a comma, dying or Java comma? It's not true. Why it's so popular? And right now in Solo tonight, there are 3 or 4 performances in the Solo area. Each one will probably get about 500 people watching because it's the rainy season, and they'll get 20 to 30,000 on the live streaming. And that'll go to 100,000 and more. It's very, very popular. And that's I'm talking about. I'm talking today about the between 1980 and 2024, 45-year period. So that's the scope. Now, even with that scope, we could be talking about all these different things, right? But my work is to lecture for a Paris class at the Johnson Art Museum on 13th of November. My work has always focused on dramatic structure and how the dramatic structure of the performances has changed so much and why. But today I'm talking about social critique and commentary. That's kind of an area that I'm moving more into. So this story is that I'm going to talk about today from the viewpoint of 3 different performers. It's called a dhalang. Dhalang is a branch like from a tree. It's a branch story. So if you imagine some series that you love, like I don't know, Succession or Schitt's Creek or Mad Men or Friends or something that you love to watch. Imagine all those characters. Those characters are defined. What they do is defined. The relation to each other is defined. Then you make up a new event. That's what dhalang is. So characters from the Mahabharata, their relationships are the same, outcomes are the same eventually. But this is a new episode within the structure, and that's what the Javanese do to change up the Indian epics that they borrow from all these millennia. Right? So this is a dhalang about Semar. Here's Semar. As far as we know, I mean, I was hesitating, but as far as we know, he doesn't exist in India. Japanese creation. And he's also known as Ismoyo. This is when he's up in the heavens as a god. He's a god in the heavens. He's the son of Sanghyang Tunggal, and this is his grandfather, Sanghyang Wayang. And up in the heavens, he has 2 brothers. And the brothers cause a lot of trouble. The gods in the heavens in Japanese, they're mischievous. They have affairs, they steal things, they do all sorts of different things with gods in the heavens. So he has 2 other brothers. Here are the 3 brothers with their father. The middle one is Semar. Those 3 brothers have all they have all these conflicts and have all these things happen to them. Competitions, compete with each other, things including competitions to swallow a mountain, and they end up really deformed from all this fighting and all the stuff that they do. And Semar turns into this form after all this arguing and this competition with swallowing a mountain. And this character, Tejo Moyo, becomes Tolka to his mouth, when it's smart. Moyo becomes Patorki because he took a joyride on a sacred cow. And he is the closest character we have to Shiva, although he's not exactly the same, but he's the closest character we have to Shiva. So they end up like this. And then this is a different story. That's it. I'm done with you. I want my Moyo to stay up in the heavens and be in charge of all the gods. The god of fire, the god of wind, god of money. He thinks he's got the greatest job. He said, you just wait. that this is going to be a nightmare for you to be in charge of all those gods, but that's your job. And then I want to go down to earth and be in charge of all the evil types. I'm going to try to convince them not to do all the scheming things that they plan to do. So throughout history, starting with Rockwater and then throughout all of always trying to tell the evil guys, why do you want to get that as your wife? Why don't you just find a nice girl to marry? You know, and he never succeeds in convincing them not to do whatever they want to do. So Semar is given the task of watching over all the virtuous types. All the virtuous types throughout the and make sure that they live up to their potential. And so that's his job. So he has mythical status in Java. He's a god sent down to the earth to watch over all the virtuous people. He's really got a really mysterious and captivating image for the Javanese people. So President Suharto, who was the second president of Indonesia and was an authoritarian dictator for 30 years in Indonesia, he took Semar as his icon. So he identified with Semar. I'm a god from the heavens who's come down to the earth to lead the virtuous chosen people of Indonesia to the right way. And he really took that on as an icon. And there was a letter, supposedly the way he got that idea was, there was a letter, a document written called Super Semar, which gave him the authority to control the chaos after the 1965 killings and the communists sort of down scare, killings and massacre. In 1965, he was brought in to control things and to rein in the power, rein in the ropes, get things together. And the letter that gave him that power was called Super Semar, and from then on, he decided he was going to be Semar to the people. And this has continued to this day. So this past election, in 2024, this very past election, there were 3 candidates running. Suharto's former son-in-law, who ended up winning that role, and a man named Ganjar Pranowo, who was governor of Central Java when he was running, and Anis, and who had been governor of Jakarta. And the Central Javanese governor decided he was going to identify with Semar, that this might be a way to win, you know, because it worked for Suharto. So he also identified with Semar. This is very sad, and I almost didn't put this is going to affect this. I almost didn't put this in the show, but I thought it was important to show that even to this day, Semar is such a strong. So he such a strong influence. This is Ganjar. He decided to identify with Semar. So he asked a very famous composer named Subono to dress up as Semar and follow him around on his parades and things like that. And they were doing a parade in Solo, and this is giving him his power to have this Semar figure. And they're doing a very hot day in Solo, and if you're dressed up well, what character, all the reporters are covered up with very thick makeup and and he collapsed into Ganjar, right into Ganjar, and died. And that was it for Ganjar. Everybody was like, well, that's it. Like he has no chance then because of that event. And this was I'm sorry to play it, but this was the news coverage.
Ganjar dan juga Bapak Mahfud beserta dengan rombongan itu berhenti saja. Ada apa ini?
Pemeran tokoh perwayangan Semar saat hajatan rakyat.
Let me just go forward a little bit. So there's Pak Bono dancing in the parade. This is an offering of power to Ganjar.
Ganjar Pranowo. Ia langsung membopong tubuh Subono untuk kemudian dievakuasi dan dibawa ke rumah sakit. Kabar duka ini juga telah dibenarkan oleh budayawan ST Wiono. Penghormatan terakhir akan diselenggarakan isi Solo pada Minggu 11 Februari sekira pukul 10 waktu Indonesia Barat. Lebih lanjut, saat ini jenazah Subono disemayamkan di rumah duka Kentingan Jebres, Kota Solo.
Interaksi dengan para pemain wayang orang dengan dalangnya juga semuanya
dan juga Bapak
beserta dengan rombongannya pemirsa ya.
Kita akan melangsungkan prosesi penyerahan wayang Wisakeni dari Ibu Puan Maharani yang akan diberikan kepada Bapak Ganjar Pranowo, dan wayang Semar yang akan diberikan oleh Bapak Arsya.
Ternyata di sini Bapak Ganjar dan juga Bapak Mahfud beserta dengan rombongan itu berhenti saja. Ada apa ini? Oh,
Download Tribun X.
Yeah, sorry to have to show that, but I thought it was very powerful. And that's even today, that's Semar in Javanese society. And I went to my husband, I went to Papono's funeral, and there were two funerals, so very, very public one at the conservatory, because he's a very famous composer and dhalang and thinker. And then there was a very private one at his home. And Ganjar came only to the private one. He came and he gave a speech and he begged for forgiveness and started talking about why it didn't mean anything. And people were basically like, why don't you just go home? You know, like, this isn't a place for you to explain to us why this didn't mean anything for you, you know. So we come back to the topic, which is these three stories. So this man, Ki Anom Soeroto, created the episode that we're talking about. He created the episode Semar Mbangun Kahyangan. Late 1980, like October, November of 1980. And he was told by the government, he had been, I'll probably ask this to be taken out of the recording. He had been part carrying the Communist Party. And when the uprising started and it was clear that that was not going to work for his future, he became really close to the Suharto government. And as a matter of fact, the first time he went overseas, he went to immigration with a passport that he had before, and the immigration authority said, can you bring your other passport? A different passport. They wanted to help him, you know. So he was told by the government to create a story that would facilitate infrastructure development. Pancasila, which is the constitution, the five principles that Indonesia is based on, and he was asked to create it. So he created the idea, okay, Semar is going to be really angry at the Panoa and the Panoa, especially the Panoa. He's going to be sick of these princes that he has to take care of. They've never had, they're lazy, they're not helping themselves, they just depend on their allies. They don't do anything for themselves, and Semar's sick of it. So he goes back home up to his hermitage village. It's back home. And he says, I'm going to build my version of Utopia. I'm going to build my version of the heavens up here. You come up here if you want my support. And he does it, yes, because he's upset, but also because he knows he's found out through this meditation that there's some dangers. There's some things that are planning to come to the Panoa Kingdom and steal away this document of authority they have called the Kingdom. And he knows that. And so he's trying to get, and he says, bring the communists over with you when you come visit me. He's trying to get them out of there to bring the document with them. But he's also a little angry in his version. And so there are a whole bunch of disguises and misinterpretations of identity, and it's a 7-hour play. Semar gives them a speech of his vision. He said, what I'm doing up here, this heaven on the top of this mountaintop, is infrastructure. We have to build the roads, we have to build up the hospitals, we have to build up the people, we have to build up the constitution and the Pancasila, and we need good schools and a good situation for the people. And this is why, I mean, some people refer to Suharto as a benevolent dictator because he did have these policies that were to develop things for the people, but the other side of it is his family members always had a hand in his projects. So, but so that's the story that he was asked to do. So he does this story because very popular. And all these sponsors of Wayang, people have Wayang because of the Founders Day of the university, the opening of a new hospital, the opening of a park in a village, a wedding. They all want this story. And they might be able to afford him. He gets approximately now he's still alive. He gets approximately $6,000 US for performing for 1 hour. Thousands of people watching him, etc. After he's paid for the trumpet, sound system, and the lights, and all the 50 crew that he has, he probably pockets about 3,000 every single night that he performs. He probably performs 10 times a month. So they might not be able to afford him, but they definitely want that story. So every dhalang was being asked to perform that story, and everybody had to know it. And everybody was talking about infrastructure in schools and things like that. And not really sure how it was all going to happen, but that's what they were doing. So that was his version of Utopia that he was asked to pass on. He didn't really create that himself. And then a few years later, Ki Mujoko Joko Raharjo was at an event. It's very common in Java back then. It doesn't happen very often, but back then it happened a lot, but not now. You'd be at dinner right before the Wayang, and that's when the sponsor would tell you what story they wanted you to perform. So that was very common in villages. So you'd be sitting around the dinner, small talk, and then they say, okay, I want you to do tea, or I think I want you to do that. And the dhalang kind of have 50 or 60 stories just ready, in your head. And they had narrations memorized, and there's a structure that they did, but they had to have the basic idea in their head. And he was at a dinner, and the sponsor said, I want you to do Semar Mbangun Kahyangan. He didn't like it. He knew what it was all about. It was sort of a propaganda kind of lakon the story. He didn't want to. And this is information from his son, who's still alive. He didn't want to do it, and so he said, I can't do Semar Mbangun Kahyangan, but I'll do Semar Mbangun Kahyangan. Sorry. Semar Mbangun Kahyangan, which is a golden palace. Like Semar, it's the same idea. He found it on the spot, but the idea of a golden palace, and he made it up on the street, and his son said it was quite amazing. His son's also a dhalang. What he did was the same basic storyline, but instead of Semar, it was Petro, who's Semar's son, and who represents the people. So Semar represents the people for Javanese Wayang. And Petro was saying, you got this country up. What's wrong with it? It was grassroots. It was all about grassroots. Yeah, we don't have any schools. Yeah, we don't have good roads. We don't have it. Instead of just saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We don't have it yet. We don't have it. And it's very funny. And Patriots a lot of jokes that became very popular. Totally grassroots side. So this became the version that became popular. When somebody said they wanted Semar Mbangun Kahyangan, dhalang would do this one. And the sponsor didn't know the difference. Because they usually went home after the first week long memorized narration. They usually went home. I was a Semar Mbangun, it's not very long. And so it became incredibly popular. And they all did. I mean, this is just representative, but it's all over YouTube. If you go on YouTube, all these different dialects, Semar Mbangun Kahyangan, Semar Mbangun Kahyangan, Semar Mbangun Kahyangan, but they're all the other version, the people's version. All of them that I've listened to, all these ones I put up here, just so many of them, And I was telling Chris that I don't have the exact numbers, but I would say once a month there were like 50 wayang, like 35 or 40 of them in this story. Everybody's still asking for this story, and they're still getting the other version, the grassroots version. Nobody has noticed. It's been 35 years. So anyway, then along came Ki Purbo Asmoro, and he's the man that I work with. And he wanted to give a different version of Utopia. He had a really different thing that he wanted to talk about. So he did something pretty clever, which isn't unusual for him. He said, I'm going to tell Semar Mbangun Kahyangan in the context of our Romance instead of the Maharaja. And that'll get people to tune in. But that's not the point. The point is my vision of Utopia. But I'll get people to tune in because I'll say, Semar Mbangun Kahyangan in the era of the Romance, and everybody will go, oh, what's that about? So it gets everybody to tune in, and then he really smashes them with his version of Utopia. So he starts with some, and he has Kaya's, anybody from Kaya's class knows what I mean when I say different structure. He doesn't have the same structure as those other two dhalang. He starts from a blank slate and kind of does a free form for 7 hours. And he starts with Semar being in distress because of all the brainwashing that's happening. And he says Chuti Ota. I mean, he says that, brainwashing. And people are leaving action culture in favor of moving around just hundreds spouting nonsense. I don't want to insult anybody, but this is just factual what he's talking about. He tries to gather three important Semar tries to gather three important amulets from the days of the Roman to secure heaven. He still got that Maya story, mythical, the amulets, it's all allegory, right? He tries to gather them. He just throughout the seminars comes across one last soul after another. That's his play that he does. And in particular, Sugriwo, who's the king of the monkey army in the Ramayana, his soul has been completely taken over by Ravana, who's in Java, completely taken over. He's just been completely converted, brainwashed, and really, really extremely so. So this is one of the narrations, one of the things that he says, this nation of Olinda will not be easily remedied after the terror of Dosamuku's script. Ever since Dosamuku's beliefs managed to take over people's brains, the result has been great destruction. Devotion has gone astray. Culture pushed aside, any sense of unity gone, any sense of common decency destroyed. The people of Olinda need to be educated and built up so they're not so easily brainwashed. One of the things he says in the opening. And then he brings up, these are the brainwashing characters, the characters doing the brainwashing. So there's an immediate sense, if you know Ki Purbo Asmoro, he is really angry at the situation in Java right now, where a radical, I mean, I have to emphasize that, one small radical element of Islam is interfering with Javanese traditional culture. And he's very angry about it. And so these are meant, I'm sorry, the picture's blurry, but these are meant to be characters that look Arabian. And I really don't want to insult anybody, but this is actually what he's doing. The reason he's so angry is because it's not in Java. If you know about Islam in Java, it's a very tolerant, very caring, very open and peaceful form of Islam, and it's syncretic and has combined with the Hindu Buddhist of Java, and it's a really wonderful sort of syncretic thing. But there is one society that is more radical, and it's not like they're going to a wayang performance for torture and burning things down. That's not what they're doing, but they're just stopping people from putting on wayang. So all those village cleansings, opening of a park in the village, or once a year, there's a well that's considered to have a spirit in it that's very special and needs a wayang performance. Those kind of performances are just not happening. Because those happen from village contributions. Those happen by somebody going from door to door and asking for a donation for the library. And they gather money, and there are 2 or 3 residents from that village who go to Jakarta, and they're going to well, they give $1,000 each, and everybody else gives $1, $2, and they but they have to give. As much as they love Bible, they're not going to have their name on that piece of paper anymore. Because they make trouble in certain communities, certain situations, they get in trouble at the mosque. And I can vouch for this. I've been there for 30 years. There are 2 months in the Javanese lunar calendar, Utopia and Soeroto, where all this cleansings happen, and they're just almost non-existent. And it's because people don't want to sign on a piece of paper that they're donating to the land. And so they try to get by, and Dhalang try to do it for free, and everybody's trying that the next one way down. The other thing is he's been asked a number of times when he goes to a performance to take out his dagger. So there's a dagger in the back. And it's an inanimate object that has some sort of power. And Ki Purbo Asmoro says, that's my traditional outfit. You want me to take that object and get it down, and he won't do it. And he's so angry about these things that he's putting them into a lot of his performances, and this was one of them. So this is a long thing, but I'm going to play the excerpt of where he actually says this. You can just read it yourself, and then I do have it below the video, but it's kind of small when I turn the video on. It's not as subtitles. So you might just want to read that. Okay. Oh, just no, just trying to get the sound here.
Pementasan wayang semalam
Oh, there we go.
subuh
Okay. Let me just find the
setahun
spot.
Kampung Jawani
Genep
akan
setahun Kampung
dimulai.
Jawani dengan mengambil.
I think it's about here. It might not be exact. So these are 7-hour performances.
Ning wong-wong
And you
sing
download
aku
them and
pendhita
cut them
kae
up.
sing nyebar. Saiki dadi pirang-pirang gaweane nglumpukke menungsa-menungsa tur diweden-wedeni. Diapusi. Cangkeme mung waton jeplak. Dari iso mateni geni neraka iso munggah mudhun langit sapitu sedina kaping 1000. Lek arep miwiti saka ngendi iki sing bingungke kene iki.
So here's Semar talking to his brother. The version of Shiva that we have. And I'll tell you when this text actually, exactly when it starts.
Iya Kakang banjur kepiye? Merga ngene. Ratu Ngalengka dhisik dhewe mbiyen jenenge Banjaran Jali utawa Lek Jali. Banjur turun menyang turune meneh sing jenenge Getah Banjaran kuwi ratu sing angka 2 banjur Prabu Puskara. Sak bubar
Sorry.
Sinudarsana. Iya. Merga nganti saiki nek tak delok iki akeh wong-wong neneka ana Ngalengka sing ngakune dadi wong suci. Ning sejatine kuwi mbiyen gaweane Dasamuka. Wong-wong kae mbiyen wong lumrah tur wong mlarat tur kere. Diangkut karo Dasamuka didadekke wong suci ana kene. Ndase diubel-ubeli sorban. Kon etok-etok dadi wong suci kon ngaku tedak turune dewa. Mula ana awake iki ngaku jane ana getihe dewa sing mili. Nek ora getih diancuk. Lah wong dewa ki ora duwe getih kok. Lah arep padha samuka saiki wis mudhar. Ngalengka wis bedah. Ning wong-wong sing ngaku pendhita kae sing nyebar. Saiki dadi pirang-pirang gaweane nglumpukke menungsa-menungsa tur diweden-wedeni. Diapusi. Cangkeme mung waton jeplak. Dari iso mateni geni neraka iso munggah mudhun langit sapitu sedina kaping 1000. Mula nek menungsa-menungsa sing kaya ngono ora ndang dielingke, ngalengka iki engko bakal bubrah. Diapusi nganggo dongeng sing ora nalar. Ning gumunku wong alengka padha ngandel lan padha percaya. Apa padha minger kiblate kabeh.
So I mean, he himself is quite angry about it. So this goes on for 7 hours. There are many, many, many different things I could have shared with you. But in the end, he says, Semar, at the end, says, I plan to build my own heavens. A heaven is a place of peace, a place of pleasures, a place for devotion, and a place for noble pursuits. Heaven's a place where culture is at its richest and deepest, where people have been educated and cannot be brainwashed into thinking there's one belief system that's the purest above all others, for the most righteous above all others. That's how he says it. And again, here's the punchline. Okay, here's the punchline. I got rid of his personal information, but Purbo is Islamic. He's Islam, and that's not the issue. He supports the Islam religion, and he doesn't fast because he has some physical things, but he supports it. But he's so angry right now at a certain segment, a very small segment, a powerful segment, that's making people powerful from the top, making people afraid in their neighborhoods of doing things like signing a paper saying they want a Wayang. So I don't want you to go in the idea that he's anti-Islam. That's not it. Or that he has any sort of major hatred in his heart or anything. He's a wonderful, wonderful, kind, open person. It's just that he's so upset right now with what's happening with Wayang and what's happening in neighborhoods, that he created this new version. The other kind of punchline is that Soeroto, back in the 80s, when he made that very first version, he had just come back from his first trip to the Hajj. And he had been sent there by the government at the cost of the government, because the government was worried that Islam and Wayang were starting to diverge. And they thought if Anom Soeroto was on the Hajj, that'll bring them back together. So it's really interesting, I think, to look at those two contradictions in a way. So there are 3 versions. A vision of utopia that has been instructed to him by the government, that the infrastructure, the building. A vision of utopia that has to be the people from the grassroots up, and that this version is not happening, and that the people have to be listened to. Then this became a popular version for over 30 years until Purbo said he used to joke every night, turn on YouTube, Semar Mbangun Kahyangan, Semar Mbangun Kahyangan, and everybody's just reading they transcribed this and they're just reading it, and nobody's doing anything new. And he said, I want to do this thing about the radical elements of neighborhoods that are stopping people. But the only way, nobody's going to listen to it if it's just Semar Mbangun Kahyangan. So I'm going to put this in to get them to turn it on. That's what I'm going to do. And so that was his view. I just wanted to show you, these are the various, this is sort of a little self-promotion, but these are the things that you'll find in the Cornell Library, which are the works I've done on dramatic structure. But now I'm starting to move more into this social critique area. And you can find the recording that was up that Chris was talking about, the recordings with English subtitles at this link. And I don't know if I can share I can share the slideshow. So at this link, there's 6 performances of all sorts of different dramatic structures with English subtitles on all of them. And this is a new project we're doing where we're going to branch out and look at the next topic as well. But we're going to branch out and look at sponsor, we've already started working on the sponsor in Singapore, kind of document what all these men are doing, except for these two passed away. Because it started right before COVID, they passed away of COVID. But these men, comparing and looking at the social critique and the dramatic structure of dhalang. And I just want to show you also, and you'll get this link, you can look at, there's a collection of all of his performances that have English translation. That link will still direct you to his YouTube, so he gets the counts. But they all have English translation. There are many, I think 35 all night, 35 7-hour. What I need to do next is curate a little more. Like if you're interested in an environmental theme, are you interested in this culture versus religion theme? I need to curate a little more so people can go to something they're interested in meditation, spirituality, so that I can help people make their way through 35 times 7 hours. And then this is something Ki Purbo is doing called the Knowledge Series. Oh, sorry, that's the translations. This is the Wayang Knowledge Series. They're short 20-minute things about characters or about different things. This one was about the batik motifs that the characters have painted. So there's that. So let's see. I think pretty good with time, right? So thank you very much, and I'll take any questions. Any questions? Yes.
You are such an inviting way of presenting.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So you are focusing on male data,
Mhm.
and I understand the reason why. Are any of the women who are emerging, do they take on this?
Yes.
So how is it manipulated?
Very interesting question, because yes, I ended up through many different ways that both Kaya and Chris know. I ended up working with this particular artist, but there are some female researchers who are studying female dhalang. I'm a female researcher, but what I mean is women studying actually how to sit at the screen and move the wayang and do a performance. I focused on the gamelan in my performance. I know how to do a few movements, but I can't perform a wayang. But there are some women, two from Japan and one from Australia, who actually want to sit at the screen and be able to perform in Japan. Right? And those researchers have focused on female dhalang, and they're doing some research on them. The interesting thing is, the oldest female dhalang alive in Java, her name is Rumiati. She is the most courageous and the most adventurous. And the younger female dhalang that are at the conservatory right now are kind of falling in line and trying to be recognized as a dhalang. The best way is to do Semar Mbangun Kahyangan, the way Ki Mujoko did it. But she's wild. I mean, she will sit in front of Ki Purbo and just chew him out. How can you interpret Srikandi like that? That's ridiculous. How did you ever thought about what perspective would be? And she's really great. And I think it's because this is just instinct, but she's almost 90. I mean, I feel like she hasn't been exposed to all the propaganda or something. She has no formal schooling. She's just studied wayang and used her brain. And she's
old enough.
and she doesn't care what anybody thinks of her. She doesn't care what anybody thinks of her. But she's always been like that, I think, in a way. And but there are some female dhalang. There's one female dhalang who's at the conservatory now, who's a professor at the conservatory. So they have about 10 professors of wayang. One of them's a female. And but she's pretty conservative in her interpretations. And the obstacle is these women who are studying to be performers and studying these female dhalang, they don't actually know Javanese real well. So they're studying the movements, And then they're trying to create scripts in Japanese or in English. And they don't know Japanese that well. We need to have somebody, and I don't have time to do it, it has to be somebody else. But we need somebody who understands all the stories, all the old interpretations, so that they would recognize the different interpretation and understands Japanese to know if any of these women are doing something different. Because you have to have all the background of all the old versions to know if it's different. Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Oh, I mean, no, nothing else. It made me think of where is this fountain of censorship coming from? Where people are black their names. I think it was a couple of years ago we had some presentations here by research group Germany studying Islam across South Asia was being informants and police by establishment people in conjunction with government to monitor what people not their own context. I'm curious if it's connected to that type of authoritarian trend, which includes religion, or if it's something else.
I'm not an expert in this area, but I would say it's not coming from the government. It's coming from the leaders of those particular sects of Islam, the fear and the censorship. And I'm talking about a very small group, but it's powerful. And the government's allowing it. They're not making it illegal. People say that, well, my husband would say it's just hearsay, but my husband feels like during this hard time, having these radical groups, they would be squashed. He says that's, well, that's a good thing, right? He really believes that. But now, with democracy, sometimes I think within democracy that might be interpreted you can't do anything about it. And so the leaders of those radical groups are what's causing this. And for example, there's an example 2 years ago. I wrote his name down because I had a feeling I might talk about this. There's an Islamic pundit and ustad by the name of Khalid Basalama. And he has a YouTube site where he reads letters from his followers every Sunday. And this happened 2 years ago. He opened a letter from one of his followers and it said, I'm getting more and more into Islam and more devout. But I also love my, is that a contradiction? And Khalid Basalama said on the YouTube station where like 120,000 people were following him. Yes, it's very much a contradiction. You're not allowed to watch Wayang. And if you own any Wayang, you need to burn them. So that night, Ki Purbo said, turn the light on, bring down the musicians. And that's another thing I could have talked about. He brought in these musicians that night. They went viral within 2 hours. Indonesia, if you look it up on Google, they've got like one of the highest percentages of people on Facebook, on YouTube. It went viral within a few hours. Ki Purbo set up his musicians, set up a screen, made a cardboard version of this band. But it looked like those Arabic figures. Made a cardboard version because this is so hard to talk about, but he planned to have the village revolt against this idea of burning Wayang. So he planned to have the villagers in a kind of crazy scene that tear the Wayang character apart. It's cardboard. And then the elders of the village are going to come in and say, now that's not the answer. Violence isn't the answer. We need to do this peacefully. But at the moment that the villagers started pulling apart the Wayang, his students from the conservatory in the back started yelling. And you can hear this on the video. It's on the English translation list. You hear it on the video. Burn him. He said to burn Wayang. Burn him. And Ki Purbo gets this kind of look in his eye. And he doesn't smoke, so I know he doesn't have a lighter, he doesn't have matches. And he turns to his assistant and he asks him for a lighter. And you see in the video, this has been giving him a lighter sense of I'm fine. And he's like, well, he said to burn all the lighters, so I guess I better burn it. It's this cardboard box. So it's gotten very, very hot and intense. Yes. Is there, sorry? Saudi connection. It's more the United Arab Emirates. Pat Purbo has said occasionally a little bit carelessly, why don't you know? Again, the extreme elements. But in fact, this influences the United Arab Emirates. And now the biggest mosque in, I don't know, in Java or in Southeast Asia, I don't know, is in Solo, and it was paid for by the United Arab Emirates. And they just had their Founders Day or National Day, and Solo was fireworks over the mosque and everything. So again, I really want everybody to remember we're talking about a very small element, but it's powerful. It's turned out to can just be one person in a neighborhood who has a title as an Islamic leader. Only certain neighborhoods in Klaten, especially, who are telling people not to sign that paper. So, yes. Right. Well, here's the thing about Wayang is if they're critical, no one's named. Like in this Wayang with this pundit, he wasn't named. And in they would never name the president or they wouldn't name the person, but they would create a critique that people could interpret as they wanted to. The thing about Wayang, at the end of Wayang kulit performances, this is traditional. There used to be a Wayang kulit, a three-dimensional doll figure that would come out. This is old style, village style. Come out and do a dance. The word kulit in Javanese means search for. And the symbolism was everything that you see, you search for the meaning yourself. And so the idea is, and you come to watch a Wayang performance if you're in the community and you know Japanese, like, is he talking about that thing we were talking about the other day? You know, and then you start to get a little paranoid or something, and that's they can critique and they can refer to things, but it's weird. There's a word in Japanese meeting, it's very sideways, so they can't get in trouble over it, but people know who they're talking about. So most dollars are critical of corrupt leaders. If there's been something in the news about somebody, there was a man who was in charge of the rice monopoly, and he was setting the price for rice, and he was completely broke and skimming off the top and everything. And all the dollars talked about food and corruption, but didn't use his name, didn't even say rice. So most dollars are very critical, but there are a few dollars who become one with a politician. And then we'll do whatever they say. And if he was almost 30%. We kept living with the kids, and it was a very scary situation. And so he said, I'll do what he said. Yeah. Yes, yes. But he doesn't like Wayang. Even though he's very, he's from Solo. President don't be president, but he doesn't like him. And he's the one that brought Dean Purple to Solo. So if one to spread that one. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So when Ki Purbo performed in 2010. Yes.
Yes.
Outreach range.
Oh, thank you.
People had.
Yes.
Yes. You know, I'm sure that in that scenario, being very explicit was fine. Yes, he wasn't. You know, it's not his problem, right? And also, you know, in the U.S. context, you already wanted it to be recognizable and for people to identify.
Yes, that's a different case, right?
But I'm curious, see me in a Trump. Yeah,